call. Have a roll call, please.
Schwartzfisher.
Here.
Dennis.
Here.
Sampson. Tarquini.
Here.
Reed. Scott. Howard.
Here.
Everyone's here.
One seat missing to fill, but that's underway in my understanding.
Yep.
So, so approval of the agenda, please.
Move to approve.
All in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? We have an agenda minutes from the previous January 28th meeting.
I have one comment on page 4. Under the PDR program, the last paragraph that says Little Traverse Conservancy, that's a full property had sold. We probably should change that to funding have been secured. For them sold. Secured the funding.
We read that too, but I didn't understand what it was.
Yeah.
What was happening there.
The funding was secured and stuff like Caitlin came to it because we had told her the township would put in the 25% once.
Okay.
She had the other funding secured.
Change.
Yes.
Yes. Anything else from anyone? As amended.
I'll make a motion to approve the minutes as amended.
All in favor?
Aye.
All opposed? Part of the meeting, public comments on non-agenda items. In the past, we've had some and sometimes we don't. So is there anyone here tonight on non-agenda items that would like to?
Yes, I'd like to speak up on the situation with the agenda items where you have a large group of people in opposition to a change, and then a month I can propose that perhaps consider that and pressure out. If you have 3 meetings where 60 people pack the room, that you would say, okay, let's let this go for at least a year. Also, my name is Mike Everts. I live on Blackbird Road. Blackbird Road.
Thanks, Mike. Else would like to have a comment on, that was actually kind of close to the agenda. Go ahead.
Carol Stako,
Carol.
972 Country Lane. I guess this really isn't well, I guess it's public comment. I just would like people to know that my husband did put an application in for the planning commission. So if anybody would like to speak to me about his background at the end of the meeting, I would like to.
Sir, Mr. Carey.
Yes, Pete, thank you. I would ask that you petition the township board for some kind of PA system. Old people like me can't hear what's going on.
Y'all gotta speak up.
Then I didn't realize you guys are quiet.
I'm definitely not quiet.
Yeah.
Thank you. Anyone else? Great. Thanks for your comments on that, everybody. In new business, we have a case, public hearing PC number 7-2024. Is a that was actually sent back to us. We didn't actually ask to have it come back, but it did come back, sent back from the board of trustees. Rezoning request, conditional rezoning request. And so what I'd like to do is, at this time, is have staff actually introduce a little bit of the background of why that got sent back to us, etc. And actually obligated out by state bylaw, our bylaws and state bylaws to revisit this. So it's not something asking for it. It has to be guidelines required. So.
All right. Thank you. So as the chair mentioned, what's before the planning commission tonight is an amendment to a conditional rezoning request that you have seen before. The request has been submitted by Summit Development Group and JDL Associates Limited Partnership. Included in the packet, JDL Associates Limited Partnership is the owner of the property. They have given permission to Summit Development Group to apply for this conditional rezoning. Also, there's a purchase agreement in place for the property with Summit Development, and which gives them control of the property, which is sufficient to apply for rezoning. I just wanted to say later in the agenda, we also have a text amendment that was submitted by these same applicants. The public hearing tonight is on the conditional rezoning, not on the text amendment. So we want to handle those separately. So I'll have more information on that when we get to that. So the public hearing tonight is on the pending amended conditional rezoning request. Public hearings required under the zoning ordinance. Notice was published in the Petoskey News Review on February 7th. Also mailed out to property owners within 300 feet of the subject property on that same day. The notice specified that written comments had to be submitted no later than 5 p.m. the day before tonight's hearing, which was yesterday. That's a rule that we've imposed on past projects and past public hearings. And I hold very firm to that, because if we didn't, it wouldn't be fair to people that have had to follow that rule before. So anyone that submitted a written comment after 5 p.m. yesterday, they will be reflected as correspondence, but they will not be reflected as part of the public hearing. So prior to 5 p.m. yesterday, we did receive a number of comments. All of those were forwarded to you by email. You also have hard copies at your places tonight. Comments in, and a lot of these names were handwritten, so I'm going to do my best, and I probably will mispronounce someone's name. But we received 16 comments in support, one from McKenna and Lise, one from Kevin Bankley, one from Kevin Pfeiffer, Dawn Harris, Deb Corso, Nancy Campbell, Andrew Martin, Michael Budinsky, Dakota Finery, Kenneth Goberry, Bradley Warner, Michael Casey, Robert Olson, Lindsay Dotson on behalf of GD Placemaking, Yarrow Brown on behalf of Housing North, and Little Traverse Bay Housing Partnership. In opposition, we received 3 letters, one from Megan Neal, one from Julian Todd Settler, and one from Katrina Niekorn. We did also receive a letter after 5 p.m. from Tracy Niekorn, and that will be included in the correspondence. So an analysis memo was included in the packet. This is a pending conditional rezoning request that was initially considered by the Planning Commission last November. After a public hearing, a recommendation to deny was made by the Planning Commission. The Township Board never took action on that recommendation. So that conditional rezoning remains pending. So this is not a third attempt. We're still in the pending conditional rezoning at this point. A conditional rezoning, if approved, subjects the property to the conditions that are voluntarily offered by the applicant. So if this rezoning were to be approved and the conditions weren't followed, the rezoning would revert back to what it was before the rezoning. So it's unique. It's not like a traditional rezoning in that if it's approved, it's forever going to stay the way it was rezoned. So the timeline that is included in the memo, but I'll just run through it. Application was initially made by these applicants to traditionally rezone this property last spring. Planning Commission had a public hearing on June 25th of 24, recommended denial of the traditional rezoning. The Township Board on August 1st of 24 accepted the Planning Commission's recommendation, and the traditional rezoning was denied. On October 10th, the applicant submitted a conditional rezoning application for the same parcel. As provided in the memo, under the ordinance, generally an applicant has to wait a year to reapply if they're denied, unless conditions on the property change or the nature of the rezoning request changes. Township attorney reviewed this and determined that a change to a conditional rezoning constituted a change that allowed to the nature of the request that allowed them to reapply without waiting for a year. So we had a public hearing, the Planning Commission on November 7th on the conditional rezoning, After deliberations, the Public Planning Commission recommended denial. That same night, we had another public hearing on the text amendment that we'll talk about later. Planning Commission postponed a decision on that and asked staff to provide additional information. With the rezoning or a text amendment, state law requires the township to send the Planning Commission's recommendation to the County Planning Commission. And they have an opportunity to comment. In fact, they're given 30 days to provide comment. So on November 8th, which was the day after the public hearing the Planning Commission held, staff sent the Planning Commission's denial recommendation to the County Planning Commission and requested comment. County Planning Commission on December 5th of 24 considered the denial recommendation. They issued written comments on December 6th of 24. That was a Friday. The Township Board was having a meeting the following Tuesday. It's a lot of information to get through on very short time. So the board decided to place the recommendation on their January 14th, 2025 meeting. So on January 9th of 2025, the applicant contacted the township supervisor and requested to amend the conditions offered with the pending conditional rezoning. Under section, 2300 of the zoning ordinance, if applicants offer revised conditions before final action is taken by the township board is obligated to send it back to the Planning Commission for another public hearing to consider the amended conditions. So the township board, as the chair said, sent that back, and that's why we have a public hearing here tonight. Planning Commission is required under the ordinance to give new consideration to the amended conditions and to provide a new recommendation to the township board on the amended conditions. Now, to me, at least, this raises a question of how many times can this happen? The zoning ordinance is silent on that, but this is the first time, so it's clear that procedure was followed and the township board was obligated to send it back to the Planning Commission. Beyond that, I will be checking again with the township attorney, because there's got to be a finality to this decision as well. So that is what brings us here this evening. So amended offered conditions for this rezoning were provided. They're on page 3 of the analysis memo. They're also included in the amended application and supplemental documents submitted by the applicants that were included in the meeting packet. I'm not going to read through them. They're there, and I'm sure when the applicant gives their presentation, they'll refer to them. On page 3 of the memo, we also have general facts about the property and the request. Property is zoned R1A. The request is to rezone it to R2B conditionally. And we do provide comparison on page 4 and 5 of the memo of the dimensional requirements and the uses that are allowed between the two districts. However, it's important to remember that one of the amended conditions is proposing to limit the use of the property if the conditional rezoning is approved to multifamily residential. So all the other uses that would be allowed in R2B are excluded if this conditional rezoning gets approved. The only use that would be allowed would be multifamily residential, and that will require site plan review and a bunch of other processes. Bottom of page 5 of the memo, items number 10 and 11, we included the previous conditions and then the new conditions sort of next to each other so you can see them. Page 6 of the memo, we have the conditional rezoning standards in section 2311 of the zoning ordinance. We included staff findings with those. Planning Commission can use the staff findings, modify them, or completely disregard them. As noted in the memo, the applicant also provided supplemental materials that addresses each of the standards in the zoning ordinance. I want to highlight in the memo standard number 5, not so much for the memo or for the standard itself or for the staff finding, but in our report, we did mention that Emmett County in their written comments, when they reviewed this, they noted that the township could consider rezoning a portion of the property to R2B and leaving the remainder R1. That was not part of the conditional conditions offered voluntarily by the applicant for this conditional rezoning request. I think, and purely thinking. What the township was suggesting is that the township can rezone property on their, yeah, what the county was suggesting is that the township on its own initiative could rezone a portion of that property to be R2B. So in closing, I just want to, direct the planning commission to focus on the conditional rezoning standards in light of the amended conditions. Those standards are in the zoning ordinance. There's been talk about the master plan, and reference to the master plan is one of the criteria. However, the master plan does not obligate the township to do anything. It's only if provisions of the master plan are effectuated in the zoning ordinance that they obligate an action. I also wanted to say is if this conditional rezoning is approved, it in and of itself doesn't mean anything. There's going to have to be site plan review that will be before this board. There's going to have to be building permits issued. There's going to have to be MDOT permits issued. There's going to have to be a county soil erosion permit issued. Health department's going to get involved. So there are a lot of different factors in a lot of different agencies that are going to be looking at this from their own perspectives. All of them have to approve this. So even if the rezoning is approved, it doesn't necessarily mean anything's going to get built on the property that the applicant is proposing. And because one of the conditions is it's limited to multifamily, if one of the other agencies decided they couldn't approve that, the rezoning would revert back to the R1A. We included sample motions on page 10 of the memo. We did list some conditions that we thought clarified the voluntary conditions offered by the applicant. And those were included in template form in the memo. And if anyone has any questions, please let me know.
Is that something that could potentially, if tonight was not approved or not recommended, could come back as an additional condition later?
That would have to be voluntarily offered by the applicants. And again, as I mentioned,
I guess I'm asking if that's something you could ask for, having it just be a portion of the property.
they could certainly ask for that. Whether or not that would start this process. I mean, I would check with the township attorney to see, if we can add more conditions and come back again. I don't know the answer to that at this point. I do know that tonight, this was the first time, so we're here, following our ordinance, but beyond that, I'm not sure.
Yeah, I have a statement and then a question. As I recall, one of the main objections by the people that live in Parkview was that they didn't want the traffic on Blackbird. So it was downhill and what else. I think in the new proposal, the exit is limited to US 31, not any exit on Blackbird. Is that correct?
That is one of the proposed conditions, yes.
Additionally, we can clarify too, Frank, since you were Frank was ill at the last meeting, but those two conditions were in place, offered last time we looked at it. So he actually the applicants offered up one additional condition. That's why we're here.
Yeah.
The other two were actually in place.
All right.
And so theoretically there's three now, but the other two were already looked at, but so.
Yeah. That's exactly right.
Sure. We'll try.
Yeah,
It's a big room, isn't it?
I know, yeah, it's nice, the renovations were great, but I'm having a hard time, so I gotta imagine people on Zoom are having a hard time. Anybody behind me.
Wasn't too many meetings ago, we didn't even have Zoom, so we're kind of coming up in the world a little bit.
No, we're thankful for that. Thank you. Can I ask a couple questions?
Not yet. Let's get us through our introduction to it. I'll open the public hearing. There'll be time for public comment, a couple questions, but hold the thought.
Okay, thank you.
So summary has been given by our planner and zoning administrator. And what we're going to do is we're going to open up the public hearing and offer the applicant or his representative a moment to introduce the new information. And then we're gonna get into, some public comment. And I'd like to put some guidelines in that before we start that. But, at this point, I'd like to, offer the applicant, there you are. You want to introduce yourself and a little bit of where you were coming from at this point.
Do we want to open the public hearing?
Open the public.
Okay, so it's 7:20.
What I'm passing around is the future land use map that's found in the map. And so public document, I thought enough, but we'll see. I'm gonna ask that we can reference that, so that's why that's going around. My name's Andrew Martin. I just in Blackbird Trail. Member of this community. I also own a business in Resort Township. I have a 3-year-old son that goes to school with your kids and your grandkids. Member up here. Appreciate the opportunity to present this request. I think most people are familiar with it. Tonight, the planning commissioners, you're being tasked with determining whether or not R2B general zoning for multifamily residential is appropriate for the Blackbird parcel. This is it consistent with the goals, the policies, and the future land use of the township and the master plan? Is the use compatible with surrounding property? Can the property be reasonably used as is? Are there other sites available that this could happen at and not this particular site? What I'd ask you to do is take a look at the map. And I ask everybody here to put on the hat as a planning commissioner. If your community needs housing, where would you put it? Put it in the center of the township in the farm fields? Oh, you guys enjoy rolling scenery, rural preservation. That's what you envision for your community. So where else would you put it? Well, you put it close to utilities. Well, where are the utilities? We know where the utilities are at because we can see where the development is at. Where else would we put it? Well, would we put it on a major highway? No. Would we put it on a truncated road? Yeah, that's where I would start. Truncated roads are able to handle the volume of traffic that people need. So as a planner, where would you put multifamily?
Talk about area and shore.
That's good.
Let him finish, please.
Yeah, no, it's okay. Yeah. Walkable community. People like different modes of transportation, the wheelway, sidewalks, ways and modes to connect communities to other communities. So as planning commissioners, is the best use for that site single family on a major highway? Would you, as a planner, removing all facts, would you put a single family home on a truncated road as a planner? No, you don't. So my question is if multifamily is not appropriate, I think you know the answer whether single family is appropriate or not. What is appropriate? Well, future land use says commercial. That's your commercial corridor. That's where all your commercial businesses are located. Cormax, I don't know, business. There's not single family homes on, there are, but that's not the primary use. We can look at the future land use map and the existing land use map. It shows that that's where your high intensity uses are. That's where your infrastructure is at. That's where your development goes. That's what we're planning for future development. Development will happen regardless, right? So as planners, we need to plan for that. We need to plan for the infrastructure. The infrastructure is there. Emmett County has made significant improvements in utilities along that corridor, that whole corridor for future growth. We did provide some of that information along as supplement in regards to sewer and water, which are a concern. Maybe the utilities or the infrastructure is not up to par. We found out that's not the case, and you have that data. So as we talk about land use, there's obviously concerns that come with it, and we've heard those concerns. And I think what the public deserves to know is, how will this impact me, right? They don't care about the numbers or anything. How is this going to impact my daily life, right? How is this, what type of condition is this going to create for my community? Is this going to change the character of the community, right? Change can bring uncertainty. And I want to acknowledge those concerns raised. And each and every point, whether here or not here tonight, has a valid concern. Each one needs to be heard. Each and every one. Anyone that cares enough about community and their community engages in thoughtful conversation, constructive discussions, and lays out all those concerns on the table. That's the process that is crucial. That's the process where we work together to be able to provide value in the needs for the community. We saw that. It was a little clunky. We saw that here. Got denied twice. But what we gained was valuable feedback. We got feedback from the community. That valuable feedback we took and proposed voluntarily conditions that restricted the use of this parcel before even having any engineering or anything done. That's pretty unheard of. It's not a requirement. But we did that. And if that's not a show of good faith, I don't know what is. We heard that the traffic was a concern. We heard that we don't want people going through our community. We don't want that for you either, right? So we made a proposal to put the exit and entrance off US 31. There's no reason for somebody to go up on 31, come up Blackbird, and then go through your community just to get back to 31. There will be, I can't say there'll be no traffic. Hopefully that you'll make friends and relationships, and hopefully they'll come visit you in Parkview. But what we've conditioned addresses the concerns of the community, and we voluntarily put those forth. We deeply respect the concerns of the community. We also deeply respect the needs of the community as well. My contact's available. I've given it to the township. I'll give it to anybody that would like it after this meeting. Be happy to give that to you. I'd welcome any conversation about concerns, about any elements of design, anything. We want to hear it, right? We want to be able to take that information and provide something that the community can enjoy, that helps the community, that supports the community. I heard walkable. Walkable communities are very important to developments. We look at, what's required for people to want to live somewhere. Walkable communities, right? So being right off the wheelway, we can connect to that, right? So people in there can use different modes of transportation, bicycling, walking, whatever, to go to work. Okay. So there are elements that information that's provided is beneficial to everyone. So we welcome that, and I would ask that everybody do reach out. My goal for tonight was really two things. One was to provide information and dispel maybe any unknowns, right? Uncertainties, any things that we have concerns with. It's change. It's different. And so tonight is to provide that information to you to show what it would look like, what is there, what that would look like for traffic. And the second part is I would like to establish a relationship with each and every one of you. That is true. So the safety being in the safety of the community and traffic. I want to touch on that a little bit. You know, right now we have 6,000 people commuting that are members of this community contributing to the workforce, to the jobs. 6,000 people are coming into our community every single day to work a job, provide a service, do something for this community. Those people would love to live here, but they can't. So they're commuting. They're contributing to that traffic that we're concerned about. We're not creating 6,000 new jobs. We're not bringing 6,000 new people. These are the people that are already here. So having them be able to live where next to where they work, they're not going to be contributing to that traffic. They might be alleviating, right? So while we do have concerns, what is the use? Well, these people are workers. They're going to be working, right? So yeah, on their way to work, they're going to be in that traffic jam with you. They're already there now. Lunch and dinner as well. Also want to point out that US 31 is capable of handling 75,000 cars daily. That's not desirable, but it's capable of handling that. On average, there's about 12 to 15,000. That study's done right at Blackbird and 31 annually. We have that data going back. We can look at it. It would take 50,000 units, homes right there to have any type of significant impact on the traffic. We're not proposing that. So the infrastructure, the truncated, the primary road is responsible for carrying people and goods and our loved ones in and out of the communities. It's capable of handling 75,000. We have 15,000. We've proposed the conditional entrance on 31. So that's the direction of traffic. So the traffic will not be in Parkview unless there's a purpose for being in Parkview. You know, provided some water and sewer studies as well. You know, I know there are some developments that are happening along that corridor. I think the total number of units is somewhere around 300 that have been approved. Not all of them come online. Not, as you heard, not all of them get to the finish line. I have the data here, but I think our sewer is capable of handling 1,500 more homes on top of the 300 that's already counted for. And similarly, the water's the similar capacity. So utilities are not an issue. Utilities are important for this site because without utilities, it doesn't pencil. You can't do it. You can't provide an affordable home, affordable place to live without having utilities in close proximity. So could you have this somewhere else? You could. We've looked at all the available parcels for sale. None of them have utilities there. They're not affordable. You can't do it anywhere else. There's stalled developments inside the city of Petoskey because utilities are just that much further. Utilities are critical. So
With Boyne City,
I'm sorry,
can you talk with Boyne City,
in regards to,
the development parcel?
we are working with the city of Boyne City for development down there as well.
What's the name?
Summit Development Group, the app. I'm sorry.
You got some information.
Yes.
Yeah. So you're connecting with that and you're doing that. Are you doing it for them?
Where?
I'm glad.
I'm sorry. I'll be able to answer your questions after.
Yeah,
But
thank you.
yeah.
Let's let him finish his presentation, then we'll open it up and then.
And I'll
Just remember
respect.
your question, Bill, so.
I'll respect everybody's time. I'll try to hit the highlights. Maybe. We've talked about the voluntary condition for zoning, restricting the flow of traffic. We heard the concerns for noise and visual nuisance, right? You don't want to see it, you don't want to hear it, you don't want to smell it, that's fine. Fortunately, the parcel is wooded, right? So it will afford to have a buffer of trees around the perimeter that will prevent sight in and sound out. There are engineering studies through the Arbor Day Foundation and a few others that do show how much trees will cut down the noise. So it's a standard use by engineers. The topography also lends for noise abatement due to the elevations. So the condition that we are proposing is that we will leave a buffer of trees. I would like to further define that, but we will do that through the site plan process where we will bring a site plan. Everyone will have a chance to comment on it, contribute to it. That's really where a lot of this, where the rubber will meet the road. But we are conditioning that we will leave a buffer up along Blackbird and 31 and the neighboring parcel, this gentleman's neighboring parcel to the south. Lastly, the condition for multifamily, R2B allows for many uses. The one that we're proposing is multifamily. That is our intention, is to build multifamily units there. It is our intention to make them affordable. We're going to use programs that are available to make them affordable. The programs that we use are through MISTA. We're working with partners at MISTA. They do have rules and requirements. There will be audits. It will be standardized and followed just like all the other workforce housing developments in other communities. So there's no intention on building these for sale, available for rent. This is strictly for workforce, for people contributing here locally to our economy.
So it's still an apartment complex.
No, ma'am.
So you're not planning on building a.
Hold your questions, please, till he's through, then I'll give you a chance.
Well, thanks for everybody's patience. The last topic I wanted to really talk about was preserving the township's character. Okay, what will happen to the township's character with a multifamily development on this parcel? Will it change who we are? Will it change how we think? I would like to think so. Going to bring in new people, new ideas. People are contributing to our economy. They provide services to ourselves, each other. They help us live where we live. I'd like to think that those people would be able to impact other people's lives in here. Like, I'd like you to think about people who have impacted you throughout your life. We're preventing those people from being here. These are the people that need to provide healthcare to us. McLaren they need 50 housing units for their medical staff. They have people that are commuting, they're paying traveling nurses. Healthcare is a real issue. Historically, technology has been the growth industry for jobs. It's not. The next 15 years, the largest growth sector is healthcare. Why? Largest segment of the population is retiring, is aging. Who's going to provide care for them? Right? So we need to have places for people to live of all types. High end, as expensive as it gets, and as affordable as it gets. We need units in all of those categories so that the people who are in the high-end homes that maybe are empty nesters, that need to downsize, they need places to go. We don't have those options. like to provide one last illustration here and then I'll turn it back over. This blue here, I know everybody can't see it, but just indulge me here. These blue cells there's 6,000 cells. These are the people commuting to this community that are members of this community that can't live in this community. This red up here is 100. This is what I estimated would be here tonight. You guys represent this. This green here are the number of homes for sale in Emmett County right now in 5 bedrooms. 292. This is the current situation here. This is your community. This is where you live, right? So while each and every one of these red cells, all these 100 points are extremely valid and well-founded, and we've learned a lot and we've grown from that, there's 6,000 other voices that aren't here because they can't be, right? We don't get to hear that. So it does feel like we don't want this in our backyard. It represents a very small portion of the people that are actually commuting here. I'm not even talking about the whole community. So in summation, we feel that rezoning to multifamily is appropriate for that parcel. We feel it's a little more appropriate than commercial, which the future land use fix. We know it's more beneficial than single family. You can't do homes there affordably. If you did want to do single family homes there, you would have 8 homes on there. If you wanted to get utilities to that, you would have probably $3 or $4 million, $3 or $4 million homes. Is that what we need here? Somebody with a third home? No, we need people here engaged in this community, helping each other, caring for each other. So I would implore you, yes, listen to the concerns. They're valid. They are valid. There's gems in there to be learned, but also focus on the facts, right? What are the facts? I feel we've provided those. The staff has provided memos 3 times now. Emmett County has provided memos supporting this, right? So you as the planning commission, the greater good for the community, I implore you to consider this and approve this conditional rezoning request. Thank you.
I have a question.
Yes.
How many units are we talking about? Residential? You call it multi-family. How many families per building?
I can give you the total number of units that would be allowed if it were rezoned,
Okay,
and that's 200.
200.
Mhm.
The reason why I ask is, I took a visual count of how many homes are in Parkview.
Yeah.
50.
Yeah, a quarter of it.
But they have 2.5 times the acreage that your proposal has.
That is true.
That's pretty concentrated. The other question is, are these condos or rental units or what?
There'll be rental, workforce housing. Mhm.
I'm gonna turn it over to the public and get some comments and input. But at this point, can you hear me? Okay. We're gonna open it up to public comment. Most of you guys have been here, Gail's been here already, so you know how this works. Lots of people want to talk, so I'm gonna limit it to 3 minutes as best we can. And it's in respect to everybody else in the room, so that everybody has a chance to have a chance, basically. And I ask that you be respectful to your neighbors and the board members. Even if you're not hearing sometimes what you want to hear, you know, we're trying to be as objective up here as we can, so we're all ears. And so I guess I'd like to open it up and we're gonna start. And we'll start with the first guy who put his hand up, and that's Dave Snyder.
Thank you.
Time starts now.
Since Andrew gave a visual with his presentation,
This is word for word what I'm going to read. Normally, I'm pretty good at speaking extemporaneously.
You can get it in 3 minutes.
My wife is here too, and she's going to yield her 3 minutes to me so that I can get through these 4 pages. Is that okay?
Yeah, no.
Okay, and my apologies to Jennifer. I mentioned her in what I'm going to read out loud to you, because I don't know her last name. I do now know her last name, but I just refer to you as a first name. Okay, here we go. Ready for the clock? Okay.
There you go.
All right, well, here we meet again for the 3rd time. I know it is not necessarily my place, but I feel like someone should apologize to you, our fellow citizens who serve on this planning commission, for the amount of time and effort that have been asked of you on this particular zoning request, one in which you have ruled not once, but twice already. So let me say thank you for the work that you do and for the thoughtfulness you give to these kinds of zoning requests. Like you, I have attended all the previous planning commission meetings regarding this Blackbird Road proposal, both when this original zoning request was made, and then a second meeting when you were asked to review a somewhat revised plan. I have appreciated your thoughtful consideration at each of those meetings and heartily support your decision on both occasions to reject this request to change the zoning from R1A to R2B. I have also attended the July 9th, 2024 Township Trustee meeting, at which the original zoning request was rejected, and then the January 14 meeting when this plan was sent back to you as Planning Commission members for reconsideration now a 3rd time. When attending the trustee meeting on the 14th, I was surprised to hear an informal invitation under the remarks from the public section of the agenda from someone named Jennifer to attend a summit presentation to be made at the fairgrounds that very same evening. To my knowledge, no one from Summit had contact with our neighborhood directly to invite any of us to this meeting. So I thought it would be important for me to attend. When I arrived, there were only 6 people there, 3 of which were presenters representing Summit and Housing North, and 3 community members, of which I was the only representative from the Parkview Estates neighborhood. It was a shame that this meeting was not better advertised, as it was a missed opportunity to create a dialogue with the residents of our neighborhood and the developer making this zoning change request. Unfortunately, I have not seen in any of the written materials provided for this meeting or in any of the other meetings I have attended to find any real significant changes in the Summit proposal that would warrant why you are here tonight a 3rd time. Therefore, I stand before you in strong and direct opposition to the zoning change proposal. It will not take me 39 pages to elaborate on the key reasons why you should vote to reject the zoning change request. The reasons are clear, the same as what you have heard before. 1, consistency with the township's master land use plan. In the rezoning, is the rezoning consistent with the goals, policies, and uses proposed for that area in the township's master land use plan? Throughout the Resort Township Master Plan that was adopted February 13th, 2024, you identified 2 specific areas targeted. She yields 3 minutes.
Please. Stand up, say your name and have your 3 minutes.
That was Snyder. They have my 2 minutes.
Thank you. All right, throughout our Resort Township Master Plans, where did I leave off? Okay, here we go. You identify 2 specific areas targeted for high-density housing, the Bay Shore area and what is described as the Township City Interface Area as defined to the east, US 131 and Cemetery Road, and to the south, Intertown Road. Objective 2.4, page 22. Strategies 1 through 7, page 28. There is no specific mention of high-density housing in the US 31 corridor area as you have defined it in your master plan. The strategies 1 through 7 can be found on page 30 and 31 and relate to the following: restoration of the Little Traverse Wheelway Trail, consideration of building heights for any business development, the need for a corridor study to address calming traffic, access management, streetscape improvement and pedestrian bicycle traffic, and collaborate with MDOT to improve traffic safety. The only mention of high-density housing is found in Strategy 7, which says, and I quote, capitalize on the existing location of Bay Shore to allow for greater residential densities and mixed-use neighborhood development at the west end of the corridor. 2, environmental compatibility and compatibility surrounding property. I'm not going to read the whole thing. That's your language. This is a big no. As Planning Commission members, you're well aware of many other projects that you have approved that are ongoing at this time. A quick list to remind you of some of the other approved projects. Summit's other multi-million-dollar project, which has broken ground, as well as removed much of the forested land that used to protect the vineyard development from seeing or hearing US 31. A monstrous 3-story hotel that dwarfs Cormac's, which you can no longer see when traveling south. So much for potential unknowing drive-by customers who might have stopped for something to eat. Another hotel in Bay Harbor, a Bay Harbor PUD development extended from the Cliffs development, which now will obscure our view of East Park from our neighborhood. You are further reminded on page 34 of this packet that Chairperson Ehrman of the Emmett County Zoning Coordinating Committee makes reference to your own master plan strategy, number 4, which creates an expectation that there will be some kind of corridor study, which is the verbiage in your own master plan, before moving forward on too many other projects. 3, reasonable use. Can the property be reasonably used as currently zoned? The answer to this is an obvious yes. It is currently zoned R1A, and it would be possible to develop 8 homesteads in this property, which would still be a profitable venture for any creative developer. Would anyone else yield 3 more minutes? John, thank you. All right. Number 4, impact on public services and infrastructure. Whether any public services and facilities would be significantly or adversely impacted by development or use allowed under the requested rezoning. Yes, see above. The increase in traffic that will result from the current projects that you have already approved is a given. The failure of inertia these last 3 years, and it's probably more than 3, but I'm being kind, in addressing the restoration of the bike path and looking at pedestrian bike traffic hazards that are present on this US 31 corridor have been brought up time and time again, to the point that one would think a viable lawsuit would be more likely when someone gets injured or is killed on the roadway, as happened last summer, further north in US 31 in Odin. It would be sensible as Planning Commission members who have heard this concern over and over in these meetings to be seen actively addressing these safety concerns than worrying about avoiding an opposite lawsuit from a Grand Rapids developer seeking to make more money. In summation, if the Emmett County Planning Committee is looking for specific reasons, since that like that's sent back, to reject this rezoning request, you have plenty. 1, your master plan never refers to US 31 corridor as a good location for high density housing. Commercial, as in stores and offices, yes. High density, no. 2, your master plan does suggest the need to do further study both with MDOT on safety issues and on the corridor in general as to the best way to move forward. You need to follow your own advice and pause any other new projects until that is accomplished, along with seeing the impact those current ongoing projects will have on our neighborhood and overall community. And then finally, take a deep breath and pause. Time and place should govern your decision making. You have identified several locations in Resort Township that would be ideal for high density housing. The Township City interface area along US 131 and the Bayshore area. Stick to your original plan and do not make the mistake of an opportunistic decision that borders more on the convenience of the developer versus what makes sense for the current neighborhood residents, many of which have been tax-paying citizens of this community a long time.
John, who is John that yielded third time, please?
John Garrity, 966 Country Lane.
Okay, thank you, John. Go ahead.
Okay, so before you start my time, I do have some questions and it might alter my comments, so I'm hoping you won't include that in the 3 minutes.
Well, what I'm looking for actually is that kind of address that Dave just did. I'd like to see objective comments done in a short period of time so that.
I have those, but I would like to ask questions,
Okay.
sir, before I make my comment.
Okay,
Okay, so it was stated that there were 16 letters of support that were sent to you. I'm curious about the letters of support because I saw 2 in the supplemental package. One of them was from that Lindsay Johnson. Who may or may not be here. Okay, excellent. Who lives in Charlevoix, by the way, and is with Housing North. So Housing North is no longer a neutral, which they have stated in the past that they've been neutral. You are no longer neutral. You are now in support of this. So with that said, the way that the support reads, it doesn't point this location. It just says you guys are in support of additional housing up here, which we are too. So are the rest of those, are the 15 other letters of support linked it, whatever probably was passed out at that forum, like, you know, a couple paragraphs in support of additional housing, Mr. Lane?
Yes.
So it's not really in support of this particular rezoning, it's in support of additional housing up here, which we are as well. So thank you for answering. Second of all, 1,000 units that you just held up, Mr. Anderson, did you poll every single one? Did you poll those people and do a survey and ask them if they actually really want to relocate here? So some people like the gardens. They don't necessarily have to live a mile or 2 or 3. Did you poll them?
This is public comment, not question and answer. And I know it's difficult to understand, but that's not the purpose of this.
But I'm limiting it to 3 minutes. You've already almost had your 3, but I allowed you the question, but if it's gonna go into 20 minutes of questions, we're not gonna do that.
I asked you, you gave me the opportunity to ask questions. Oh, I'm sorry, and then I'll switch you. I don't.
Okay, well, remember, you get 3 minutes starting now, please.
Thank you. So basically, I looked through the supplemental package and a handful of things. First of all, I don't see how this is different from the last zoning request, but, and you say it is, okay. So what was in the supplemental package, they pointed out goal 1 and 2 from the community goals, but they didn't point out goal 3. Who was the staff that wrote those answers? I'm sorry, it's another question. I forgive me. I apologize. I need to know. Was that Mr. Lane?
Are you referring to the staff memo that has the names of the authors on it?
It says, it's.
Or are you referring to the applicant's memo?
It's
Yeah.
staff analysis of the questions that were dealt with. And there were probably 6 or 7 questions answered. And there was a staff analysis that answered the questions dealing with the potential objectives or issues dealing with.
The memo in the packet had the names of the authors on it.
Anyways, goal 3 of the community goals and objectives deals with corridor. The corridor, it definitely speaks to commercial. It definitely speaks to the name keeps changing, high density housing or multifamily housing. It doesn't speak to that. It speaks to commercial, and there's 3.1, 3.2, 3.4, 3.5. This rezoning is in direct, it's an option to what is already in the master plan. So I can get with Dave Snyder that a lot of this is against the master plan. But since I'm getting down to the wire. High-density housing and the smart growth principles noted in the master plan and cited throughout all the documentation and what the developer has proposed. This is not walkable. This is not conducive for this type of housing. It's not walkable. Master plan specifically calls for a corridor study. This has not been done. Preserve open spaces. That's all throughout the master plan. You're tearing down a good chunk of natural resources. 71% of the residents that responded to the Resort Township Master Plan want planned and limited growth. There's so much in this master plan that you guys just put out that is in direct opposition to putting up all these different developments up and down corridor 31. And your how much traffic that 31 can handle? You don't live or work on that 2-mile radius. So whether it's 12,000, whether it's 30,000, and I'm sorry, I believe it's more than 12,000 during the months of, June through November. You don't have to try to get in and out of the subdivision or the businesses. It's a safety hazard, and until you guys correlate with MDOT, I think you guys should hold on.
Thank you very much. I think the gist of your comments are that you're stating that you're in opposition.
Yes.
I will go next to here, but she actually had her
That's
hand
okay,
up.
I can't see behind. So,
That's
yeah,
okay.
it's-
You're next. Yes,
Me?
please.
I'm Tammy Vegas, I live at 815.
Sorry, could you speak up too, because we can't.
I'm Tammy Vegas, I live at 815 Blackbird. And there are several reasons we oppose the rezoning of the parcel of land at the corner of Blackbird and US 31. When Nathan Abbott first proposed his plan for building his high-density apartments, he certainly did not take the well-being of the existing Parkview community into consideration. He originally proposed the entrance for this 200 apartment complex to be on and off of Blackbird. Although it is clear that he fancies himself a great builder, he proved that he is not by not being able to identify the pitfalls with that plan. And my greater suspicion is that he did know that what an additional 400 cars driving through the Parkview subdivision would cause for the neighborhood and didn't care. He has certainly demonstrated his disdain for our existing neighborhood with his rude and condescending attitude at our township meetings. And I see he's sent a surrogate tonight, so. I know that his latest proposal eliminates the in and out off of Blackbird. But if we rezone this property like he wants, we have no assurance that he won't put an entrance off of Blackbird. Because he has clearly shown us previously that he does not care about our existing neighborhood. He has tried to paint himself as someone who just wants to help our community by building affordable housing. Please, please don't fall for his portrayal of himself as the altruistic hero who just wants to help Petoskey. Let's be real. He wants what he wants. Nathan Abbott couldn't care less about our community. He is a bully who wants to roll up from downstate, exert his will on our township, make his big bucks, and move on. I don't believe we can trust him to give a rip about our existing community, but I hope we can trust all of you to care about our existing community. Rumor has it that he is prepared to sue the township if he doesn't get his way with his rezoning request. I hope the planning commission will think long and hard before they decide to lock arms with this bully. We do not trust him or his intentions with regard to that parcel of land. He has proven he wants what he wants, and that it doesn't matter about the folks who already call Resort Township home. Please, please, please do not give in to him.
You had your name or hand up.
Okay. Carol Staco, 972 Country Lane. I have a question about talking about the amount of cars that have traveled on the road. We talked about this corridor study thing, and now suddenly you're telling me, and this is just coming out of the blue, we've never heard anything before about how many cars travel that, and I'd like to know where that information comes from. You say we have it every year, and I don't recall driving over those traffic things being counted on the thing. So where are you getting your information from? And you're saying that it'll handle 75,000 cars a day. Is that meaning before the road collapses and falls apart? Or is that it'll handle that much because that's
Design engineer for that.
designed and engineered, what, to hold the amount of weight that goes
Volume, a number of cars.
Well, tell you, I grew up in Milford and moved down here, so I moved up here. And Milford Road, I don't know if anybody familiar with Milford. Milford Road gets 100,000 cars a day. And it is a traffic jam every morning. It's a traffic jam every night. And in between, it's just a solid line of traffic. So you're saying it'll hold 75,000 cars, but that doesn't make it anything pleasurable or even right.
Never
It would be so you're acting like 15,000 is a drop in the bucket. Well, I don't care if you think it's a drop in the bucket or not. the traffic will affect the road, it will affect the road bed, it will ruin the road faster, it'll have to be replaced. And I think that I would just like to see the information. Where are you getting your information about how many cars? And where were these studies done and by whom? Because this is the first for anything about this. And we've talked about this traffic and how many cars, and they acted like they weren't aware of when the last corridor study was even done.
I can't comment on the last comments, but the data is from the Michigan Department of Transportation. They actually send somebody out and
How old were they?
they do it annually.
Last one you got is 2023. Right?
Yep, they do it annually. Michigan Department of Transportation is where we obtain the information. I'll also mention, actually, I do want to ask a question. Who here has contacted the Michigan Department of Transportation?
There are several people who tried, I know.
And said that this is unsafe?
Yeah, he said there's been no study requested pertaining to this matter, but it could be requested,
That's right.
but it has not been requested.
Who all here has contacted Emmett County Road Commission? Those are the authorities for managing traffic safety. We have nothing to do with that. If it's unsafe, it's good to know. But the authorities, the people who actually are responsible for maintaining that safe roadway would be MDOT and Emmett County Road Commission.
So shouldn't that be determined before authorized or they approve?
Is there another question, please? Thank you.
Yeah, Peter, as you said.
Name, please. I know who you are, but
Yeah,
for the record, go
yeah,
ahead.
Richard Carlson.
Yeah.
We put a couple of restrictions on that earlier, and then the third one added. We were told what that third item was.
Say that again, please.
Restrictions volunteer that they put on their property if it's in zone.
It's a third condition.
It's just two conditions for the facilities.
Yeah.
Did you hear the facilities on what, Stephen?
We did read that.
I didn't read them. I can do that though.
Would you please,
Yeah, sure.
direct that
Read all
question?
three.
All right.
Read the first two, and then the third one that was added.
Okay, so I'm going to read verbatim what was submitted in the application. The subject property is presently zoned R1B. It's actually zoned R1A. As set forth in the Resort Township zoning ordinance, Summit View Development Group respectfully requests the township to conditionally rezone the subject property from its current zoning of R1A, one family residential, to R2B, general residential, based on the following applicant proposed conditions. 1, the primary driveway is to be off of US Highway 31 with no driveway access on Blackbird Road. 2, a natural screen and tree curtain will remain along the subject parcel's east boundary line on Blackbird Road and boundary with neighboring parcel to the south to buffer sight and noise. 3, proposed use is to be multifamily residential.
Family residential meaning 4 stories high and 60 units, like was mentioned in the last meeting.
We've seen no proposal at this point at all.
The guy said 300 units.
200.
200. I misunderstood.
And that'll be part of site plan review. There are criteria in the zoning ordinance for multifamily.
As well as buffering, as well as
Landscaping,
ingress, egress onto highways, also part of that site plan. So, which none of what we've seen, and they actually haven't proposed yet. So, anyway, someone's in the back with their hand up, please. Thank you. Kendra?
I've been at the last couple meetings as well. Neighbors, has anybody seen the lovely tree line in the vineyards that was brought up by the summit? Okay.
Yeah.
If that's your proposed tree line that buffers sound and all the things, I would be irate if I lived at the end of that road. Because now my entire property is exposed to US 31. And I took a walk up there yesterday with my son and I can hear the traffic just fine. Thank you very much.
Yes.
So I don't approve of the tree line proposals on this property. I don't think that that is considered what any of us would like to see in our beautiful Emmett County, let alone our nice, beautiful subdivisions. And I understand there's a lot of people commuting. I'd love to see the numbers on that. I'd love to see the surveys on that and who it is, whether they're seasonal workers or all year workers, that also makes an impact. And I would be interested in seeing the site plan if they would offer it. I think that's important. But again, I also want to back up. I'm not sure which one of you said it, but really we're here again with the same thing again after we've spoken. We've spoken. So why is this considering again for the third time for the same thing? And how many accidents are we going to see along that corridor before we have to put in a new traffic light? We just saw one at Resort Pike Road again the other day. So that definitely hasn't been answered. And if there haven't been recent surveys done, they sure as shoot we need to get that way. So I agree with you, Dave. We need to have a little bit more planning before we just snap our fingers and make this go. Thank you.
I'm gonna go to the back, because just before you had pulled that off, please. Yes, sir.
Kyle Denham, 39-2 Greenfield.
Kyle?
I recognize that this is still a meeting on whether we want to rezone the usage of the property. My question, I guess, is, I'm not sure if I'm reading this correctly, but it looks like, and maybe this is the R1, but 60% of the site area excluding road right of way needs to be open to paved space, not include building, parking lots, pedestrian lots, and driveways. I thought in the last meeting, they had asked for like to be able to include some of the 11% grade as open space where that's outside of the ordinance. Is that still part of the proposal that they're asking for?
Initially, there's two parts to this public hearing. The first one is the zoning, and then the second one is the language that would consider what you're asking.
Okay.
Yeah.
And we haven't got that far yet.
I'm sorry, I got your link too, I just didn't know, but my other question is, and I applied for the trustee position that was open, but in that interview, I was asked, if I was opposing this, and I do oppose this, but the comment was made that if we don't rezone it and keep control of it, if they win, Falcon Group wins the lawsuit, the township loses control because the county could then rule in their favor. Is that correct?
First of all, I don't know anything about a lawsuit, but I'm not qualified to answer that question.
I just don't know if we don't rezone this, what are we the next recourse that the Falcon Group can come and say, well, this is what we want to do. We're going to do it because we're going to get a judge to rule in our favor. And then we're just sitting here twisting the breeze and we have no other control. I understand that this will probably be rezoned at some point. The proposed project doesn't make sense for that area. Now, if it was something different, I don't know. I guess my question is, are we just kicking the can further down the road by denying this or saying we want to deny it? What's the question?
What could happen?
What's the
next?
next?
What's the worst? Yeah, what's the worst could happen?
What's the worst case scenario if we keep kicking this down the road and say no to?
We don't know.
I don't know if anybody can answer that, but I mean, is there anybody have an idea?
It could be other requests for zoning, rezones. There could be, find out, down the road, the next person down the road, or you're hypothetical, you don't know.
I mean, and if it ended up in court, it could go either way. I mean, the judge could rule that a denial was appropriate or go the other way. But I don't know exactly the process, but at no point would the county take over the zoning. I don't know if you said that or I thought I heard you say that. Yeah. Yep. Yeah. Yeah. I mean, a judge might say, township, you got it wrong. And I don't know if they have the authority to then rezone the property, but it would still stay under township jurisdiction for zoning purpose. Yeah.
Still, this project doesn't make sense. I still think that it's all no on these.
Thank you, Kyle. Good questions. Good questions. In the back.
We're probably one of the few homes that actually live on the 31 and just.
Your name, please.
Oh, so it's Stacy Schleter. We're at 3091 Charlotte Avenue. And we are actually
on 31, so it is tempting to have a way right across the street, but I can guarantee you that that was one unsafe path to get across that. As busy as it is right now, it's hard to get across, so I don't do it. And I'm healthy and I'm young and capable, but there's a lot of people that would make that path, you know, unsafely across the 31. And we do know that MDOT doesn't put in lights until enough people have died. And I don't think that's really something we want to knowingly do. I mean, so I am against it. That's it.
Reading a couple times. Go ahead, please.
After they're done, neutral nonprofit, that is a partner with your township. So the letter that I submitted was in support of rezoning. So it was still neutral. Yes, I live in Charlevoix. Thanks for noticing. But I'd rather live here. I can't move because housing is defined, right? As Andrew pointed out when he passed out your master plan and the future land use map, the master plan essentially does hone in on the need for a study. Everyone has mentioned said study. This came out 1 year ago, right? The project was first proposed in June. And so there hasn't been a lot of time between when we all decided collectively that we needed to study said corridor, and everyone then got really upset at this project and started to identify problems affiliated with the project that were actually problems that were already identified in the plan that was published in February. So it is very atypical for a project to take the brunt of, I don't know, blame, I guess, for problems that everybody already agreed upon ahead of time, right? The problem this project, if it were to move forward, wouldn't create more of an issue. The study does need to be done, but
Part of the solution, part of the problem.
however, Housing North.
It's her time, she's got the floor.
So as of last month, I think, actually a couple weeks ago, so we as the nonprofit that represents the entire region, and me specifically, we actually now have a signed and paid contract with your township, which means I your commissioners and staff to expand capacity. And we come with a whole lot of resources and information, of which helped inform the developers with some of the numbers that he was referencing tonight, of which you can all access at any point. So that 6,000 commuters coming into the county every day comes from a study that was conducted in 2023. And that is on housingnorth.org. You can access it just by clicking housing data and accessing the Emmett County dashboard. You can get that information readily. You can inform yourself on all of this info. So 25%.
Thank you.
Okay, sorry. Whatever. I am here to help you with the study. So note that. And I think that the project shouldn't get picked on because the study hasn't been done yet. That is fine.
Duly noted as
Yeah.
support, in support.
Of
So
rezoning.
I think what Lindsay's just saying is that she has information to offer someone if they wanna
Yes.
contact her outside this forum. So.
Thank you. My name is Carrie Finlayson, 3060 Parkview.
Carrie?
Yep. Carrie, K-E-R-R-I. I'll stand up. So a lot of this will be a little repeat, but just said it a little different way. Once again, thank you so much for your time and your care in reviewing this development. So the first thing I just want to reiterate is when reviewing the master plan for Resort Township is that as far as to my knowledge, there's a lack of a US 31 corridor improvement plan, and that's in the master township. So without a comprehensive US corridor improvement plan in place, you know, we need to look at critical transportation corridor and significant development in this area, which should be preceded by a thorough plan to address potential transportation impacts, including the flow and safety. And without this plan, the project risks creating additional bottlenecks and strain on an already congested route, affecting not only the local residents, but also commuters and businesses along the corridor. Proper planning and improvements are necessary to ensure the development doesn't contribute to future traffic disasters. And this ties in with my second point, which is overdevelopment concerns and cumulative impact. The township, as Dave said, has already approved 5 development projects along the United States, US 31 corridor. And it's crucial to assess the cumulative impact of these projects before approving any more. Adding another large-scale development without fully understanding the effects of the previous projects could overwhelm the existing infrastructure, including roads, utilities, and public services. It's prudent to wait and see how these existing developments impact the community before committing to more development that may exacerbate existing problems such as congestion, strain on services, and reduced quality of life for residents. And while I definitely agree, and many of us in the neighborhood agree on wanting to provide housing, I'm very skeptical though of local residents who really, not local residents, but local residents and people who are trying to find jobs in the area that are what we would call, you know, middle or lower income are going to actually be able to afford this. So I'd like to see more proof that even through maybe this Michigan funding, I forget the NISHDA or something, that what this would actually look like for a resident. Because looking up the square foot right now to build homes, it's around 250 square feet, which to me makes it seem like these essential workers are not going to be able to actually afford this.
The developer said 600 per square foot.
Okay.
We said that the last meeting.
So that would make it definitely not, you know, easy to afford. So instead of addressing the demand for affordable housing for those who can actually contribute to the local economy, this development could increase gentrification and create housing inequality, further isolating low and middle income workers from the surrounding community. So I would want more assurance that this really truly could be affordable for teachers, service industry employees, which is what we really need these for, firefighters, cops, you know, other low or middle income jobs.
Thank you. Yes, please.
Hi, Alyssa Kennedy, 3162 Park
I'm
View.
sorry, Heidi?
Alyssa.
Alyssa, thanks.
I just briefly, I'm kind of confused on the third condition that brought up in here today, and I wanted to bring it to the commission's attention to really look at the permitted uses within R2B, and it's I think it's quite savvy that they were able to add that that's a change, because there's very limited permitted uses that they even have. They say they're limiting it to multifamily, but the only permitted uses are 2-family dwellings, townhouses, or housing for the elderly, but they're therefore schooling. So this really is thinking about that they're changing. They haven't changed their plan. They've been able to now utilize more support letters and take the time to do that. And I really think that is to be exposed. We're getting back here, but there is no difference.
That's actually, yeah, that's not accurate. The uses that are allowed in R2B are on page 5 of the memo. And they would include a number of permitted uses, but also a number of uses subject to special conditions, which include motels, tourist homes, motorhomes, rooming houses, offices, fraternal lodge halls, funeral homes, studio art services. So they have 15 uses that they're narrowing it down to 1 as condition.
Melissa, do you have time left? Do you want to comment?
I just want to say that all those uses though that are subject to special conditions are permitted in my approval of the plan. That's another.
But-
Use without
But what they're saying is they wouldn't even be able to apply for any of those special uses. They're limiting their use to multifamily residential, period.
I still think that's seems to be that they'll difference, so they would have to get additional approval for that.
That's what this means.
There's 15 uses anyway. It really isn't.
But Okay, I mean, it eliminates their ability to apply for the special uses. Plus, they would not be able to do, all the principal uses allowed in the R1 district. Two-family dwellings and duplexes either. Right. But, you know, they're excluding all of those uses as well. The point I'm making is there's a number of uses that they're relinquishing the ability to apply for them.
Got, gentlemen in the back, please. Listen.
Couple points. One, the condition that they put on the Blackbird entrance, sounds like it's not the clear entrance. It doesn't say no entrance to Blackbird. I can tell you for sure that I've come off 31 at a time, and it can be hard. I wouldn't be surprised to see people going around if they're leaving secondary entrance. So that condition doesn't fully resolve the concern about traffic to Blackbird. I think there was a statement that there would be no traffic, almost no traffic, but like, you know, I'm assuming that if there's 200 units there, some of them would be closer to Blackbird. And it's not primary answer. That's because that doesn't fully resolve the concern that many of us have. Number two, I think zoning as is great. I think it's great to live right there on the US 31. I do. I bought a house there 10 years ago, and we did. And it's great. I think other people would love to have a house right there. Send them to me. I'll tell them how wonderful it is to live right there on the 31, and that is like 2 properties away. And I think it's great. So I think that is an absolute great use of that parcel right as it's sold right now. The only I will say.
Jason, thank you. And there's no answer. Sir.
Yeah. Michael Schulte, 911 Blackbird. My wife and I moved here 11 years ago, and we love it. We're going to retire here. I know people have trouble finding a house. I've been trying to find another house for 4 years. Not easy. There are a lot of places in Emmett County with decent roads where you could put in 2 or 3 apartments. There are. If you drive down Blackbird Road now, you come down to the bottom, no one goes left there who lives in Parkview, because those cars come flying around the corner, and there's been some people killed on that road in the past. You drive all the way around Parkview and you drop down over by where the old Astor Brands, yeah. So we don't need another Traverse City unlike this. I go to Traverse City for things, but I drive down there and go, God, I'm glad I don't live in this on this road.
Hallelujah.
And so those trees are a treasure. And if I had my way, I'd raise a ton of money. We buy that property from the developer, make it filthy rich, and give it to the Little Traverse Conservancy. So, of the nature, I love the trees, the deer, the rabbits, the turkeys. They eat all Mike's garden up, unfortunately. I see the steady erosion of the view. I look down the end of the road and they're building another damn thing down at the bottom of the park. When my visitors come, what do they talk about? The views. Why do people like driving from Sunset Park to Kilwins? What's on that stretch? Open. People can see the water. There are a lot of places where we could put housing. We need it. There's no question. He seems like a pretty nice guy. We haven't come to blows. Lots of places deeper in, not just in this township. Let's keep some nature on our strip. We've lost so much just since I've been here. Please, if it has to be individual homes, okay. But I really don't even want that. Let's preserve the nature that has made this a water winter wonder.
You had your hand up before, so yes, yes, please.
Larry Kohler, 306.
Yes.
Clarification point. So we talked about voluntarily changing his plans multiple times. He didn't voluntarily change those plans. You guys rejected the plans and then he came back with new ones. I'm sure you're aware of this when he says that, but he tries to spin it that way. Okay. As far as walkability goes, unless the wheelway gets repaired. Tree zone limitations. We've seen tree zone limitations in this township many times that disappeared. I don't. You guys have seen it, you know. So those are just some clarifications. Thank you.
You know, you spoke during public comment, didn't you? Yes, please.
Okay. I would like to also thank you guys for all the hard work, because it's not easy work. For me, it's been really not easy, because I'm right there, right to the south of this proposed development. And there's a lot of stuff I want to say, but if you gave me an extra minute, I'd like to share with the group some history about the property, because it was my mom's parents' property. Do I have an extra minute, or?
You got 3, like everybody else.
Okay, well, I'm gonna keep it super short. My grandma willed it to 4 different relatives. They were bought up systematically by the father of the guy who wanted to sell it, Nathan Abbott. John DeSigno and Ori, they're Italian family, and they're super rich. They have a giant banquet hall down in somewhere in northwest Detroit area. They can do 5 200-person weddings or 1,000-person wedding. They're not hurrying for money. They've raised the price of this property to an outrageous number of $200,000 an acre. It is not our responsibility to pass some sort of, multifamily whatever to make a poor decision by a business person paying way too much for property work. Okay, it was zoned R1. What does R1 mean? Residential 1. It's not industrial. It doesn't allow large machines that create a lot of noise and dust on the zone, and all kinds of other stuff. But right now we have this industrial scale development is the model. It's happening in 3 places down there. It creates traffic hazards, the procedure of or way of burning large amounts of wood that would be a 2-week long smoldering ashy brush pile, and then piling it up with topsoil, and then having wind events that we're getting more and more blows, a ton of ash and stuff all through the neighborhood. You can look at geological layers every winter, that all winter long right now. And it's disrespectful to nature. There's much lighter ways to do things smaller and more sensitive than just raising the place down to the clay and rebuilding, So and the other disgusting thing about it to me is that we have condos that are empty most of the time. One question I have is, what is our short-term rental rates in this township? And if are there, because I get the feeling that most, if not all of these properties in Bay Harbor and all these other developments get bought by people wanting to diversify their investment portfolio. They're wealthy, successful, professional people or business people who can afford an extra $500,000 for something up north. And then they get put on Zillow or Airbnb to help defray some of that extra payments and interest. So they sit empty most of the year and they gobble up a ton of carbon producing resources that are part of the problem. And I tried to tell you. Are you over it? Yeah.
Tracy here,
Okay. So another part of it is that you have these houses sitting empty. It's like, I've been thinking about this for 2 decades. We need a stay all year movement. I miss my summer friends, but they're gone. Because they got places in Florida they gotta go to. that's not necessarily that healthy either. So, before when I was here, I told you about this extra landlocked properties that both Megan, Neil, and I bought to preserve open space. They're like 1.25 acre pieces that are down in this very sensitive, spring-fed, unstable, steeply sloped area in that gorge that I would be willing to donate my 1.5 acres if the conservancy, we all could come together, and I'm sure the township has some sort of tax revenue looking at all these places that sit empty 9 months a year, that we could work something out and have something very close to home. Steep, irregular, undulating property is awesome for hiking. Walking is one thing, but hiking on a trail uses more of our balance and our core. It is very healthy for people. People already sometimes snowshoe there, but it's not a proper preserve with a little bit of parking that, people know they're going to be able to go there without trespassing. I feel strongly about that, and I don't have hardly any money in that 1 acre, if it even sold for half of what the overinflated $200,000 acre rate that the El Siglinori's son wants to sell it for, would be a ton of money for me. So I once again want to restate what Mike also wanted to do is just like, why don't we consider making it a preserve? That everybody around there could benefit when they happen to be home.
Lindsay Burr, and I'm gonna yield my time to Lindsay Dawson to finish what she was gonna say.
We good?
Lindsay, go, please.
Right. I got distracted. Sorry. So, real quick, I want to say this project presents an opportunity to enhance the quality of life of residents. And I do want to talk about the property values because I heard someone asking about that. So, if single-family homes were built on this property, the taxable value would triple. However, if the conditional zoning permitted multifamily units, the land's taxable value could increase 8-fold. That results, obviously, in more tax revenue for the township, and that additional funding can be used to better serve all of its residents. Over. What was that?
Parks.
Yeah, sure.
Open space.
Sure. So to touch on the 6,000 commuters that were referenced, that number did come from our study. Many of whom cannot find housing near their jobs. Many of whom don't want to spend an hour a day in their car commuting from other places. By providing more housing options, affordable or not, a lot of those people that are coming into Emmett County for jobs are coming in specifically for healthcare jobs. 25% of the jobs in Emmett County are healthcare or social services. The average salary of those jobs, $78,000 a year. So a person making $78,000 arguably can afford an apartment that might be new, that maybe isn't considered low to moderate income. But the development team did say they are going to tap into some resources that would potentially restrict how much they can charge, and also probably make it so that the people living in those apartments are there year round. The economic impact of a person or a couple living in an apartment on the local economy. So a person that doesn't have to leave their community after they're done with work every day, $40,000 a year. So if you were to take $200 units and multiply that by $40,000, that's $8 million of economic impact on our local businesses. And I'm guessing if you were to ask anyone in the downtown area or Cormax or whoever, they would be okay with some of that impact coming their way. So I want to remind everyone of what Ken said in the beginning. There are so many steps left. All the questions that have been asked could be answered if they were given the chance to go through the site plan review process. They haven't even been given the chance to do that. They could still say no after they went through that. They could. But we just haven't gotten that far. And a lot of the concerns could also, I didn't hear it go off.
You're okay, thank you. But I think what we need to do is we have lots of people up on Zoom. Let's grab some Zoom people. Let's go to Suzanne Covio. Are you there?
Or if anyone wants to speak, can you raise your hand? Martha's been waiting a long time, Jennifer as well, so. There you go.
Yes, thank you very much. Martha Shaneborn of 3082 Parkview Drive. I was at the first meeting and spoke of my opposition to this development. The second meeting I was unable to attend, submitted a letter again with my opposition to this development. I agree with many of the comments made by my neighbors this evening. I would like to reiterate, and maybe I've missed something in the conditions that were spoken of, but my fear is that if we allow this area to be rezoned, that farmland, current farmland that is south of Parkview Drive could in the future be sold and developed. And then we are looking at the exact same problem in the Parkview area of having more traffic come through our neighborhood. As it stands, where my house sits, I am right at the end of Mayberry Hill, and sorry neighbors, but there are a vast majority of you that are on your phones as you're approaching the stop sign. You look to the left to make sure nobody is coming, and you just turn without stopping. There are many neighbors that are driving past the house that are going 45, 55 miles an hour. I have kids that cross in front of my house. My son visits a neighbor, the neighbor boys visit us. It is dangerous to be adding more traffic to the potential now if this were rezoned. And that is where my concern is. We rezone it for this development, but that does not protect us from future development from others. Thank you. And again, to the board, I appreciate everything that you have had to deal with these meetings from the community and from the developer. Thank you.
So, yes, you all can hear. Martha, can you hear us? Yeah, yes. So Jennifer has been waiting and she asked to speak as well, so I will.
Hi. Can you hear me?
Yes.
Okay, sorry. I'm not going to put my picture up because I just got discharged from the hospital. Pardon me for short breath of speaking. But wanted to make a couple quick comments. Of course, most of the points have been well made by my neighbors. And I thank the commission again for your patience in addressing this important matter facing our community. Just to go back to the big picture again, there's a difference between what can be done and what should be done. I believe that most of the analysis that's gone on, say, through our administrators' hands in doing their analysis is focused on what are the statutory applications, what can be done, can this development, can this rezoning be done in the way it's proposed. But to us, more important is, should it be done? Does it enhance our lives or does it take away from our lives? We talk about development. Development is not an inherent good. We're a small town. We have a right to fight to keep it a small town. It's a small town with trees. We have a right to fight to keep a beautiful view of the trees on that property. And that's a big difference. Just because it can be done doesn't mean that it should be done. And I especially sympathize with adjacent neighbors the farm up at the top of the ridge line, and the people on the development on the other side of the ridge line, where the summit condos are going, excuse me, are going up, because they're going to lose so much of that beautiful atmosphere that they had in that little vineyards development stuck away in that cozy little drive. Anyway, I do want to focus on that. Thank you to our gentleman who discussed the family history of the property and offering maybe to donate even a portion of that property. I have been focused too on thinking, what are we going to do? Say that this is denied. Here's another alternative use of the property rather than a apartment complex. It is for us to buy the land ourselves and turn over the conservancy or create a trust ourselves. The number that we would have to raise is not, it sounds like a big number, but it's doable. I believe it's doable with grants and efforts, and that solves everybody's concern because it would be preserved. Whoever bought the property gets some money out of it or get a tax write-off for donating.
Thank you, Jennifer. You've reached your 3 minutes.
Okay, thank you. Thank you for the opportunity.
Appreciate your comments.
If anyone else participating virtually wants to speak, please raise your hand or send me a chat message. Okay.
Okay, I think,
Who do we have? We have one. We have Robert. Robert, can you hear us?
I can. Thank you.
Okay.
Robert Tyler. I'm going to yield all 3 minutes to myself. Thank you for having me and providing this forum for public comment. There are many people here tonight with passionate opinions about the community. It's positive and a testament to the hardworking government officials and community members. I'm not lucky enough to be in the room tonight, but from listening to the comments, the room is full of people who are fortunate enough to never get sick, have children, or desire furthering their education. I can promise the same people with a victim's mentality that a sign is preventing people from coming to their deli will be the same victim unable to find employees for the summer rush. The only promise I can make you with any positivity about the future is that change is coming to Northern Michigan. However, you are blessed with the opportunity tonight to control how this change is made and with who. Thank you.
Thank you. Anyone else virtually? Thank you, virtual participants.
go ahead, please.
Thank you. Cindy Bolton, originally from Mayberry Drive, now Indian Garden, lifelong resident of Resort Township, which we dearly love. We did a 2-year search before we moved here to see where we wanted to relocate to and raise our young family. We ended up here in Resort Township, went to Lincoln Elementary, middle school, high school, stayed in Resort Township the entire time. We dearly loved. We wanted a place with great recreation, great schools, great healthcare, and above all, the beauty. Now, I am completely 100% for affordable housing, absolutely. But I'm still on the fence as to whether these 200 units are affordable housing. Like, how is this going to be defined? And if these workers that are 6,000 strong coming to our county, they're not all coming to work in Resort Township. You know, we're just a little piece of that pie. And it'd be great if those 200 units could help some of these people, but I really don't think that's where the focus is on this particular development. I see where it was called Blackbird at the Summit, which to me immediately joins the multi-million-dollar townhouse with this parcel of 200 possible apartments. And I would love to see affordable housing. We need service workers, but the people that would live or potentially live are going to be in the multi-million-dollar. I don't care. I'm against that development, but absolutely for affordable housing. Just want to go on record of saying that.
I think we've gone through the crowd.
Oh, I do. I'm sorry. If you don't mind.
Go ahead.
Okay, thank you.
What is your name, please?
Jennifer Neal, 372 Rolling Hills Lane. Thank you everyone for being here tonight. Thank you planning commissioners for your time this evening. I will try to make it quick because 3 minutes go fast. So I am a planning consultant for the developer. I was brought on to this project in late December after the meetings. And I want to reiterate that listening to the community, these conditions are in direct response to the concerns that have been brought before you. Traffic on Blackbird Road, that would not be an issue because there would be no access on Blackbird Road. All access would be followed to US 31. Protecting the character of the township, keeping as much trees on the property as possible with a tree line on Blackbird Road as well as a tree line on the properties bordering to the south. So also with that, I know, multifamily sounds like a lot. It can be, and protecting that character is important. And so cluster, but also being able to cluster those units on the site and not spread it out is actually a benefit. You can save more trees, keep more of the natural beauty on the site by having that development cluster. And then also keeping these guarantees and keeping the certainty that it will be multifamily. You won't, as we talked about, other permitted uses or special uses can't even be considered. There's a level of certainty that these conditions propose, and that's what the developer has offered to you based on hearing what the community has said. So my last points that I want to make are the community goals from the master plan. Goal 1 was encourage and shape Resort Township's future growth while balancing the preservation of open space, farmland, cultural and natural features. So I think I've spoken to that with keeping the tree line, clustering development, not putting 200 home units in farmland or an open space that we all value. I should mention that I'm a resident of Bear Creek Township. And so a nearby resident, I love the natural features. And so preserving that as much as possible. Enhance the livability of Resort Township by supporting a range of housing opportunities and creating great functional and attractive neighborhoods. This is a housing type that is desperately needed. There are a number of single family homes in the township. What we're lacking is multifamily. So if we are, if you are true to this goal number 2, creating a diverse housing types. Plan for economic growth and mix of uses along US 31 corridor and attract businesses. So please,
Thank you.
thank you.
But in conclusion, you're in support, obviously, so. Yes, sir.
Oh, come on.
Consider the developer, say it's only because it's 7. But that's a whole other story. I live at 904 Blackbird Road. South of the property of Federation. And yeah, my wife grew up there. We moved to and we I've been to up to Reading.
let's, go ahead and close the public hearing, 8:55. At this point, we're gonna come back to the board and we're gonna deliberate. And I want to remind, once again, a couple of two or three things. The board is neither obligated to deny or obligated to approve. It has to be based on comment, guidance, your conscience, and everything else that goes along with these decisions. So if you choose to post a motion to deny, we want to include a couple of reasons why. If you choose to approve it, then also do that. So additionally, consider that the first two times we looked at this, the two motions, the two conditions were in place. The third one was added to, that's what the package. So it's really about the third one that we're looking at. If you want to change your mind on the first two that you looked at before, so. Having said that, I'm opening it up to the board to discuss. And a movement one way or another. Questions to the applicant. If there's anything that will help you, let's ask the questions to the applicant. At this point, the public comment portion is closed, so please keep your comments to yourself. And let us try to get through it. So, do you want to start? I will comment on what the applicant came with. Andrew addressed a few of the concerns. They talked about corridor study and things like that. The information for traffic of MDOT and City of Petoskey for water and sewer capacities was available. They brought it to us to do the proposal. We didn't have that information before. There is no infrastructure. I mean, it will obviously hook on and cause traffic. You can't put in, we don't even know the proposed amount yet. But, you're gonna have traffic flow. But the highway can easily handle whatever that can go on this parcel. So really, I don't think it's an overburden on the highway. I don't like the extra traffic in our neighborhoods either. I mean, I live in Resort Township, we all do, but the reality of it is we do have growth. So they've addressed the traffic flow and the capacity of the highway, in my opinion. It's there. MDOT will have to change it. As you all recall, we were 4 lanes, they went down to 3, 2 lanes and a turn lane. Not that many years ago, there were 4 lanes down through some of that. MDOT changed that, not us. So if it gets to a point where it's overburdened, MDOT's gonna have to step up. That's the controlling entity of the traffic on that road. So I like the fact that the condition no blockade access. I'm concerned that the tree line offer is there's no language, how many feet of tree line, what kind of tree line, it's existing. I went through that property. I think you can look 100 and some yards back in there. Right now it's winter, but I don't think there's that much foliage going to cover for screening. So if they did come between a site plan, I would be one that would ask for significant screening if it did come to that. So I'm not that thrilled about the buffer tree line because he's going to use existing. I don't think it's that big a deal. I mean, it is something, but it is not significant in my view, as far as screening goes. The offer is good. So, having said that, I'll let someone else speak.
But to further to that point on the trees, if this was to be approved tonight, we get into the site plan review, we certainly could.
Yeah.
Okay. Request additional buffer and screening
And to that point, if the planning commission, if you look at the sample motions, I did add some language to clarify that, as part of site plan review, any landscaping or screening is going to have to adhere to our ordinance requirements.
So I think personally, I have heard a lot of things in support of this project that really make me want to lean towards it. I think it's a desperate need. I live in Parkview. I don't want apartments right next to my house, but I understand the need for them. The thing that concerns me, I appreciate the multifamily condition that was presented, but without a site planner knowing about it, multifamily doesn't necessarily mean affordable, which is what we need, or attainable, or whatever language you want to use. I mean, luxury apartment buildings exist. I'm not saying this is going to be that, or this can be affordable. It may be either, but without being able to know that for sure, it's hard for me to be able.
Yeah, just one item. You said that there'd be 200 units there?
We're referring, talking to Andrew right now.
If it were to be R2B, it would allow for us to build up to that. That doesn't mean that we can. It would be allowed.
Okay, I have a great concern when you put 200 units on the highway at 8 o'clock in the morning and 5 p.m. on traffic. And to safety is more important than any.
Anything else? I think in consideration of, the review by staff, as far as your master plan is, for goals of objectives and of the objectives. There isn't the time frame. We recognize the fact that we have to address some of these things. Housing is one of them that was brought to our attention. Doesn't mean that, obligated to fix it in one vote, but you have to look at it and entertain it. And to see if it's the right fit. The neighboring subdivision to the east is concerned mostly, I think, about the density and the traffic flow. Other than that, I think these are all smart people. They recognize the need for the housing. I don't think anybody ever stood up here tonight and said, we don't need more housing. But they just don't like the extra traffic concern and the density on that parcel. I don't like the fact that I feel strongly that density, they have the condos down at the bottom of the hill, which adds density. That wasn't anything special we did as a planning commission. That was a use by right. They came and they followed the rules, and they offered us input to improve their site plan. So they have property rights. People have property rights. You all do. That's how I look at it. I'm a property rights person. If you came with a proposal, I'm going to look at it because I'm obligated to look at it. And I want to hear what you're doing, and see if it fits our zoning. That condo at the bottom of the hill adds density. There's 4 buildings going in there. I forgot how many units. So there's traffic. The study shows it can handle it. Bay Harbor, that increased the biggest increase in traffic that since the 90s when it went in. The assisted living properties for sale, bottom of the hill, that's zoned appropriate for higher density. That opportunity for someone to buy, put higher density in without even coming to us, other than a request. I don't think rezoning this parcel is out of line on the data. It's just is it right for that piece of parcel in my mind? That particular parcel. I also don't know that rezoning a split zoning, that the zoning that the county offered a suggestion, or at least, I don't know if that's right. We've been going through this township and trying to clean up all this split zoning because it's confusing for property owners and sales and, you know, so to introduce a split while it would give the buffer to the south property owners. I'm not sure if that. But it's like, you know, that's.
Well, it doesn't do anything to address the,
Which is
traffic,
traffic.
right, and congestion in the area. And yes, you would have your buffer potentially to the east and to the south, which would probably satisfy some of the concern here tonight, but at the end of the day, we're still gonna have.
Point out that we looked at this map and we went through it and we were very conscientious about thinking about where development should be. That was not one of the pieces we considered for development. It's part of the corridor and we don't have a corridor. That's a failure on our part in time. We will get one, but maybe we should consider halting development along that corridor until we find out what's happening with the community.
You're absolutely right. But I don't know how much of a failure it was, because we recognize it and this master plan only comes up every 5 years.
Right.
We recognize it. We said, hey, we have to look at this corridor.
But
And so
my idea of a failure is that we've been saying yes to things without that plan in place. And maybe we have to pull back and stop saying yes. And until we get a plan in place.
I would just say the things that were said yes to were permitted by right. I mean, there were site plan reviews, but it didn't require rezoning. It didn't require special use approval.
But maybe when we make a corridor plan, it will give us some footing for saying no to some things that we don't like. Or that don't fit.
the whole point of the study, but, or I should say the plan is about that mindset.
So maybe we should move that forward on our agenda. To work on that.
Yeah, let's entertain a motion.
I move that we take a vote.
Please introduce your motion.
There were sample motions if you're inclined on page 10 of the memo.
Pick the one that says no.
I'm not going to pick either of them.
You wrote it. I can make one.
So, following a duly called PC public hearing on February 25th. The information of February 17th, 2025. Enter and the zoning administrator, due to the findings of fact as stated, I grant leave to deny the conditional rezone 24-18-300-25 from R1B to R2B because of traffic concerns voiced by the public with the addition of additional units on that property and an added allowable density there. Because we have, in making a future land use map during our plan process, not only not identified that as an area for this type of zoning, but also have identified other areas in the township for that. And finally, just based on disturbing the population of our township after hearing the concerns, I would say overwhelming majority against this proposal.
These 3 reasons that he put on there, so if you're going to take the minute.
Cheers.
So we have.
I got one.
Mr. Reed's got a motion. Is there a second on the floor?
A second.
Is there any other discussion before I follow up? Or questions? All right, let's call roll call.
Reed,
The answer to it is if you say yes, you're improving his
You're voting to deny.
Voting to deny, so.
Say that
Okay.
again.
So if you answer yes, you're voting.
You're denying the request.
Yes.
Okay, great. It's kind of like.
So Reed's yes, Sampson, Schwartzfisher,
Yes.
Tarquini,
Yes.
Howard.
Yes.
Dennis.
No.
So motion passes 5-1.
Now, we have another case in front of us. This case, it's number 8/2024, postponed decision. Consider draft amendments to section 1500C, to B of the Township zoning ordinance pertaining to the calculation of density for multifamily dwelling. We've tabled this, to get further information, and staff actually did put some information together for us. If you, I'm sure you've looked at it. This, however, the first proposal that was in front of us was specific to the site in question. This one would actually follow the entire township. Correct me if I'm wrong.
Yeah, so the conditional rezoning was just for that subject property, the Blackbird US 31. This is a request to amend the zoning ordinance that would apply township wide. And essentially, it's a request to amend the language in section 1500C2B. And it's included in the memo on page, shows the strike through there on page, bear with me, 9. So what's being proposed is that steep slopes greater than 33% would be allowed to be counted towards open space in a multi-housing project. So this was tabled in November. The Planning Commission makes a recommendation on a zoning ordinance amendment. So if a decision is made tonight, it's a recommendation. It'll next go to the County Planning Commission. They have 30 days to comment, and then it will come back for the Township Board to either approve or deny. In our zoning ordinance, for a multi-family housing development, if you want to get a density bonus, and the density bonus table is included on page 9 of the memo, you have to dedicate so much space as open space. So we do not allow steep slopes with a 33% grade or more to be counted towards open space. So the request is to eliminate that. This request to staff was to check with other communities to see what they did. We've included that information in more or less Resort. And I'm not saying that this is bad, but Resort Township is the only community that doesn't allow steep slopes to be counted towards open space. For purposes of this project, because this request was submitted by the same applicants, for that Blackbird parcel, what it would mean was without the zoning ordinance amendments, they would be able to do 77 units at the maximum density. With the amendment, they would be able to do 122. So if steep slopes on that property were allowed to be counted, they would gain 45 units because they would be able to have more open space. Steep slopes, generally, they're difficult to build on, but if they're environmentally protected, they won't be allowed to be built on. Staff doesn't have a feeling one way or the other, to be honest on this. I see both sides of it. I think it's a good protection, but there is a need for cluster housing as well, and this would allow people to achieve greater density by counting steep slopes.
I just have a simple question. There a limit as to how many feet vertically you would allow if you had a slope?
Anything 33% or greater is considered a steep slope under our ordinance.
But is there a limit on the amount of vertical distance that slope occupies? Meaning 100 feet, 200 feet?
Not in the ordinance, there's not.
Just for the record, the public hearing has been open.
Yes.
This is a public hearing.
Well, actually, it's not. We had the public hearing in November, and because the decision was postponed, you can allow public comment if you want, but it's technically not a public hearing on this case. It's a postponed decision. Yes. Yeah.
And we postpone it, so this is a deliberation.
Correct. It's different than the conditional rezoning. We were, because of the amended condition, we were obligated to have a public hearing. This one, we've already had the public hearing.
So the question to staff was, go ahead, Frank, the density was, because of your, how long your slope?
Yeah. You do have somebody in chat.
To my knowledge, the only thing that is considered, as far as permitting goes, is in our ordinance, we only call out percentage, but in a building construction application, they have language in there about steep slope construction. That applies. So when they go to build, if zoning is allowed,
Okay.
then the building department steps in and says, no, you have to construct this way on steep slopes.
And we don't have that many here.
No, it's done. You see them in Bear Creek. We have a few locations.
But we don't.
All over by Bay Shore, Lake Michigan's frontage. And of course, along the highway corridor, we have some steep. There's some.
Yeah, probably
There's some
Blackbird
areas.
is one.
Blackbird's one of them.
Yeah.
So,
I'm okay with it.
let me ask you this, Ken, is when someone comes with a proposal and do they use what, you can use wetlands then, that way, if it's on what billable, is that what it takes consideration?
Yeah, no, it says, our open space definition excludes structures, parking areas, and other impervious surface. Exclude from the gross area of the site, public roads, wetlands, areas dedicated to community sanitary sewers, and currently, steep slopes greater than 33%. So you can't, right, correct. You can't count those towards open space.
So this is a single, it's a language strictly for slopes.
Right.
And only multifamily.
Only on multifamily, yes. And it would only apply to properties where you had steep slopes. If it's a flat piece of land, you're not going to be able to take advantage of this, right?
Steep slope is quoting there. They'll have that much less ability to put.
Well, I don't know. It would mean that developers proposing multifamily housing wouldn't be able to count steep slopes for their density calculation. Yeah. So they might not get the density bonus they're hoping for.
The reality of it, you have
Yeah.
Yeah. The exception of the property we talked about today, everywhere else, this is, multifamily would be allowed to use steep slopes exist.
if we introduce language, approve it, then it would go in the entire township, whether it's on ballroom.
Sure, but most of that property isn't zoned for multifamily.
Yeah, I don't know. I'd have to look into that and get back to you. I don't know off the top of my head, where else in the township this might apply that's zoned for multifamily.
Well, it'd be anything that's R2B or greater, R1.
I mean, I'm afraid I'm going to lose everybody on Zoom, but I'll give it a shot anyways.
Higher density up by Epler and Sheridan. That is, higher density. Right. But there's no slopes up there. It's just,
Yeah, you're not gonna have very many.
it's not too much, really.
So I'm pulling up the map. So the multifamily is sort of if you can see down here, this darker, R2B is this darker, yes, whatever that is, yeah. So those are the areas where if they had steep slopes, they would be able to take advantage if the ordinance was amended.
Addressing. Yeah.
Did I lose everybody?
I mean, it's gonna affect so little of property in the township.
It's called micromanagement.
And if it does come up, we know it's been brought it up. Many developers.
And we can all do it. It's like,
I think you can.
Yeah.
Well, if the amendment was approved, you know, you wouldn't be able to, a lot, steep slopes would no longer be prohibited to be counted as open space. You know, you'd still go through, you know, multifamily, even though it's residential, site plan reviews required in our ordinance. You know, a single family home is different. That's a plot plan administrative approval, but a multifamily development requires a site plan that has to come to the planning commission.
Question, how did this come up? Because it's such a small.
The applicants for the conditional rezoning also applied for this. So they did apply for this, but if it's approved, it's going to apply township wide.
So it was applied for specifically.
Yeah.
To the other.
Okay. Right. Okay.
But it's, you know, we had a postponed decision from November, so, you know,
Take care of it tonight.
yeah, you got sample motions on 10 or 11. Alternatively, you could further postpone too, but we should do something with it.
Either I mean,
When we take a vote.
I did. Oh, I did get a comment. Sorry, I didn't mean to interrupt you. One of the virtual participants said, look at Lake Grove Road, maybe too late for some of the construction and environmental changes.
so this wouldn't apply anyway.
Right. Okay.
Thanks for the comment.
Oh,
Go ahead, Tim, with your motion, please.
Okay. Following a duly called PC public hearing held on November 7th, 2024, the information in the February 17th, 2025 memo from the township planner and the zoning administrator, and due to staff findings as stated therein, I, Tim Howard, move to recommend approval to the township board trustees an amendment to section 1500 C2B of the Resort Township zoning ordinance. I leave all that in there.
Yeah, because they are the ones that applied.
As included in the application submitted by Summit View Development Group LLC and JLD Associates Limited Partnership and signed by Nathan Abbott on October 10th, 2024. Subject to said amendment being reviewed and approved by the township.
We have a motion. Do we have a second? Second. All in favor to approve the new language as amended to include steep slopes? All in favor?
Aye.
Aye. All opposed? Tim, I didn't hear you vote.
Aye.
Okay, thank you.
So the motion passes. So the next step is this will go to the county and then it will go to the township board.
What both of those cases at this point?
Yes.
Okay, so we got one more agenda to get here for you guys. Let's go to housing and Lindsay is here.
I don't have any other updates that we want to. Thank you. There's gonna be a new, we are launching, as of later this week, it's a soft launch. A new, tool that will be able to connect people looking for apartments. With available listings, because there's an informal network of listings through Craigslist and random realtors, and take them to help facilitate those connections. So, I'm sure it'll be clunky at first, but that will be a new thing that will be going out very soon. So, and I'm sorry, there's an event on March 6th, next week. Yes, sorry. I have been thinking about a lot of things today, sorry. And that'll be about the zoning atlas. I believe I talked to you about that during your January meeting though, so you already have that information.
Yeah.
Thank you so much.
I don't have any updates. You know, the one that was approved last year is still.
So, Mike, you're in the audience. I want to address this just for a second. We're on a PDR program, portion of the, and you brought up the topic of making that a preserve up in that area. And what we have in place is a PDR program in the township that allows you to apply if you are an owner of a parcel or property. And you would actually grant that into a but you have to own the property. So what happens and why that probably won't happen up there on Blackbird is because that parcel is ripe for development, and I wouldn't be surprised if somebody's back there at us again. But they would usually give that to this program at a greatly reduced amount, and they're gonna want top dollar, and we're not gonna give it to them. So likely that's not gonna come into before us through that program. And that's the only thing we have as a township in place to do for sure, that I know of. I think the rest of it go to the tip.
It's basically purchase development rights is what PDR means. Yeah, so basically you would still own the property, but you would sell your potential to develop it.
And so that would pretty much, and you can name, you're right, absolutely. You can name your stipulations on the property. If you do that, you can keep it as farmland, you can keep a chunk for your kids. And the rest of it's undeveloped. But so that, since that parcel is under such pressure, likely not that's gonna happen because they're not gonna get the money to come out in the open market for it.
Right, yeah.
And so the idea is solid, it's, I don't know if the reality is there though, you know? So I just want to point that out. Thanks for that suggestion.
It has to be.
John, this senior, his son is in charge now. I don't even know if the dad's still alive.
This is something that the zoning administrator had that he wanted to bring to light. It was a letter that sent in, you think we do during correspondence.
Yeah, I listed all the letters and public comments that we received. And I will make sure that we include those in the meeting minutes. The one thing I wanted to add, in addition to the zoning administrator's report, township supervisor asked me to share this letter with everyone. It was at your places. He thought it was a kind of an innovative approach. So the Monti Corporation is applying to MISTA, the Michigan State Housing Development Authority, for essentially employee housing loans. So supervisor asked me.
That's a letter of support by supervisor.
By the township for that effort. Yes, for that effort, yes. Mm-hmm.
Are we supposed to do something? I mean,
no, the supervisor thought it was unique and interesting, and he wanted me to share it with the planning commission.
On your planning report here.
Mm-hmm.
Did not pass.
Right.
Is that back on our plate now?
I mean, I think that's up to the township. I mean, in that bill the state wouldn't have taken control. It just put conditions on what locals can do, so that it didn't make it past lame duck or whatever happened. So yeah, now
back to square one.
we are. The township, if it was so inclined, could come up with regulations for short-term rentals.
On the administrative report. Planning commission comments, report to the township, of the township board of rep, and that being Mr. Howard.
Yeah, just real brief. We're currently working on budget. Last couple of meetings, we have a meeting this Thursday at 5:30 to continue budget deliberation before we put in the special meeting to approve it, probably early March. And the other item is, we appointed Carrie Klingel-Smith as a replacement for a Welshhammer as trustee.
She resides in the township, you know.
She lives out off Camden.
DBA rep,
Nothing.
no meetings, no. Okay. Commissioner comments from anyone? Anyone received any correspondence? comments, anything? Non-agenda items, we come back to you all. Anybody out there on non-agenda items?
Yes.
Sir, you've been here the whole meeting.
It's quasi agenda, Brian Bates, Bear Creek Township.
Oh,
Brian,
I'm sorry, Brian.
yeah, no worries. I don't really care about this project that was discussed earlier, so my comments aren't specific to that project, but in these conversations around housing development, a lot of things get tossed around as truth or fact, and I worry that sometimes we accept them as such without double checking. So I just find it helpful to sometimes keep things in context and stay objective. So like Resort Township is the same size as Manhattan, right? So there's 1.7 million people in Manhattan. There's not that many in Resort Township. And the way they do that is density, but they get to have Central Park because the buildings around it are so tall. And I think that high density housing often gets a bad reputation because we want to preserve open space and it ends up being high density. But the irony in all of this is more targeted high density keeps more space open. So in the master plan and the Resort Township plan is repeatedly stated that we want open space, open space, open space. But ironically, one of the best ways to preserve open space is to promote high density and targeted locations. So I just want to make sure that's always noted. I also think on the master plan, people love to invoke it when it suits them, but not when it doesn't. There are a bevy of commercial uses that could go on this property that would be far worse than 100 families living there. So I think it's worth noting that like, just because it wasn't this doesn't mean it couldn't be something that. And I think that it's worth taking that into account. On this particular project, this is just a matter of procedure, but this was so early in the stage, so much of the comments seem more applicable to site plan review. And I know that that's not the responsibility of the public, but this particular project bore a heavy burden of 200 units, even though it's not mathematically possible on this parcel, when really it was 77 to 122. And I don't know if that would change people's opinions. I don't. But it felt a little premature to put that stress on this before it was in that step of the process. I don't know how you would solve that, but I think going forward, there's just a lot of conjecture surrounding that. Also, on housing affordability is not a reason to make a decision. It's not necessarily germane to the ordinance, and people invoke affordable housing as a bad thing when they think it's going to be poor people who don't look like them. But then they invoke luxury housing as a bad thing when it's too expensive. It's not like the rest of us. And so somewhere in the middle is probably what's going to be, but housing is housing and we need all kinds. Emmett County and Petoskey specifically needs 3,370 units right now. That's for people who currently live here. That's not for anybody new. So all of these things feel like a drop in the bucket, but it's going to take a lot. Also, many people said there's plenty of other space in the county for this type of development. That's factually inaccurate. If you want to take into account where utilities exist, there are simply not that many places around the county that are available. And a lot of that pressure is not going to come in the city as people would like. A lot of the pressure is going to come in Bear Creek Township and Resort Township and along the Conway, Odina, Lansing corridor, primarily due to sewer more than anything. You could do commercial wells, but you can't do sewer. But affordable or not, we need the housing. People dismiss it if it's affordable, dismiss it if it's luxury. But I don't think that a lot of this is driven by facts. A lot of this is driven by emotion. And I think a lot of the challenge here is how we navigate these emotions. This isn't going to be the first case or the last case. It's not even going to be the 100th to last case, at least in my lifetime. But we're going to need to work hard to frame these conversations about what's actually going to happen and whether or not it does enhance or detract our life. I'm not sure that this project would dramatically enhance or deter. You cannot tell me which cars in traffic are from that development. And if we build 200 units further up or on Epler or another corridor, those cars still end up on the same road. It doesn't matter if you can see them getting onto 31. It just matters that they're on 31. That's how the traffic works. And ironically, an access on Blackbird would statistically be safer than an access on 31, but the concern was coming predominantly from the Blackbird side. That I'm not proposing that's what should happen. I'm saying this is where sometimes our emotions get tangled with what's statistically safer. But I just think that in general with housing, we like to have a boogeyman, whether it's short-term rentals or it's workforce or it's greedy developers or it's too much luxury housing. But the challenge is the single biggest cause of the reduction in housing in this area is not an increase in population. It's a decrease in the occupancy load per unit of housing. So a home that used to hold a family of 4 holds a couple of 2. A home that used to hold a couple of 2 holds a family of 1. And so the same number of units in the same community with effectively the same population feels this squeeze being short 3,370 units. But it's not just because people are renting out their homes or because homes aren't fully occupied. The biggest contributor is that fewer people are occupying the same homes we've always had. And that is a wicked problem to solve because that puts the onus back on the homeowner. And I'm a big property rights guy. And if you want one person in a 15,000 square foot house, I don't care. That's your prerogative. But don't take down short-term rentals and other things with you just because you want that. The biggest shift in housing is the occupancy load per unit. And that's where I think tools like ADUs and camping courts and things that are more low impact but decentralized will satisfy these needs. But I'm a big believer in keeping land open. And the best way to keep land open is to high density develop parts of it so the rest of it stays open. I don't love a lot about this project. I'm not speaking to this project, but in general, projects like this that look like this do not look like our community as it stands.
You know
But they're
what,
our
Brandon,
best ticket to
you know
keeping our
what?
community this way.
You're absolutely right on most of your points. I will tell you that we're unique in that we have most of the open land around here. And so Resort Township's coming under heavy pressure because that's what developers say. Oh, they got the open land.
Yeah.
We don't have the infrastructure. We only got it in 2 places. Down that corridor, that's gonna create pressure. Someone will be back on that parcel in front of here. And I don't know what it is yet, but something's coming. We know it is. You know it is. Everybody in this board knows that that corridor is under pressure heavy because that's where what you just said, sewer, water.
And the same conversation is going to happen on Epler, Sheridan Cemetery. I mean, that Epler corridor right now is farmland, but it is on the master plan, high density residential.
Well, we changed it.
I understand.
We tried
But I'm
to
saying
guide
this-
it that
the
direction.
same
That's partly
arguments-
Why,
Oh,
when we made this
everybody-
motion.
Yeah, we're gonna get the same argument.
But I'm saying the
against
same
it.
arguments for protecting the
Yeah.
views, the skyline, the
Absolutely.
trees will come up,
We're gonna get the same pushback.
but
Okay.
it's there.
But the difference is, we don't have to rezone that, it's already been rezoned. So it's gonna end up being a use by right, gonna be hard, now all we can do is guide what the project is.
But you
not-
still get site plan review. That's, I mean,
Right.
that's the beauty of multifamily is you'll always get site plan review at the township level, which I think is a great protection for the residents of the township.
Hey, Dave, I've got a question for you. You quoted how long you had to wait to get out on the highway the other day. What was it? How long?
When I go 26 seconds.
Okay,
That's the
I
average
was
time.
at Bay Harbor the other day waiting at the light. It was just about 26 seconds.
Waiting at the light.
Well, that's what happens. The light changes. And that controls the traffic downstream.
Yeah.
So it's not necessarily
Traffic.
a traffic issue as much as it's a light issue.
There's ways that MDOT can control the traffic, so. Anyway, let's move on here. Thank you, Brent. It's good information and we don't necessarily disagree with you.
I wasn't suggesting that in the least. Yeah, that wasn't a critique of this board in any way, shape, or form. It's just that a lot of the opposition is.
Anyone else in the public outlet that wants to comment, Rufus?
No.
Thank you, Rufus. Items to be reported to the township board, we had the denial of fees, for the RTB rezone, conditionally. And then we also did, we approved the, language to include, steep slopes and, those are your 2 actions.
Yep.
Everything else were reports. And with, our next meeting is scheduled for March 25th. With no other business, I'll adjourn this meeting.
Thank you, sir. Another funny guy.
What's, you said it was Carrie.
Good night, everybody.
You were talking about your accept being chair.